This is definitely not breaking news, but raising children is expensive. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson says she has a plan that she thinks will help. She wants up to a $4,500 yearly federal tax credit for working parents with a child under 6. It's up to $3,500 for each child between 6 and 17. She'd let families claim this while the woman is still pregnant, and she would make fathers pay at least half of pregnancy costs. She says the plan also hopes to convince more women to not get an abortion.
This is a pro-life bill. We want to make sure that women are empowered and have the tools that they need to choose life. I have a provision in the bill that's the Students' Rights Act, the Pregnant Students' Rights Act. We want women on college campuses who may find themselves pregnant to know what the options are available to them so they can continue to go to school and perhaps, choose to have that baby, which is what we want to encourage. We also know that it's hard for people to have children. It's a very expensive proposition, right? We've all been through it. I've been through it twice. I know how much that costs. So we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to support working families. And that's what this bill is all about.
The child tax credit is higher under your plan than it is in the current policies. Why?
Well, because that's the number one piece of feedback we hear. With inflation driving costs higher, it is more expensive to have and raise children. So we wanted to incentivize working parents to keep more of their own money to be able to help support their families. So that's what our incentive was here in expanding that credit. Again, it is tied to work, so we make sure that we are getting people into the workforce. So that's our incentive behind expanding that, was to just make sure these working families can keep more of their own money.
And it's tied to work in what way?
So basically, when the tax credit hits, it starts at that first dollar earned. So in order to qualify for the tax credit, we want you to be working and have income. So that's what this was designed to do. We shouldn't be just sending checks out from the government. We want to make sure we're incentivizing people to not only have that family, but be in the workforce as well. So that's what this expanded tax credit would do.
By having a higher tax credit here, how much does that add to inflation?
Now, I don't see this adding to inflation because, again, this is designed to help families tackle inflation. We want them to get back in the workforce, which is what we hear from employers time and time again. Getting people back to work will help us drive down costs. It will help with the supply chain. That's what we need to be focused on in this country. So I see this as helping to alleviate many of those concerns.
How is it the way you've got it here doesn't add to inflation? The way Democrats have done things, your party almost by and large has blamed them for rising inflation. How is that different?
Well, straight government spending is completely different than enabling people to have more of their own dollars and choose to use that toward this specifically. When you look at incentivizing child tax credit and getting people into the workforce, encouraging them to have families, this is going to make sure that they are helping contribute to our economy, paying taxes into the government, not just straight spending money and raising taxes on people to do it. This does not raise taxes. So when you look at the way this is enabled, it actually looks at some of the giveaways that are in the tax code right now to other states, like the SALT deduction that's in there for state and local taxes. In some of the states that have raised their state taxes so high, they're trying to do a federal tax giveaway. I don't think that's right, and Iowans certainly shouldn't be subsidizing taxes in other states. And that's essentially what we're doing to help make sure that this is a feasible option. But again, this is really enabling people to have that financial cushion when they're looking to expand and grow their families, which is something we want to encourage in this country.
This may not be apples to apples, but when the Biden administration doesn't want people to have to pay back some of their student loans, that would also allow them to keep some of their money that they've made, right?
But it's not apples to oranges. In this case, it's completely different. In that case, what you would be doing would be transferring that debt to other people who haven't taken on that same financial burden themselves. You can't cancel the debt, you're only transferring that debt. So it's not the same thing. And I think this is about, again, giving families the tool to both physically, emotionally grow their families, get in the workforces, which is, again, what I hear from employers constantly who are in the district wanting to grow and expand their businesses, provide opportunities for Iowans, grow their workforce. And we want to encourage both of those things. And I see this as a win-win in being able to accomplish that goal.
When you were talking about protecting life earlier, you've joined the effort to ban abortions in most cases after 15 weeks of pregnancy. If this is essentially a state's issue now, why get involved with that at all?
Well, unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., the Democrats here have laid down their position, which is that they believe in the extreme. They believe in allowing abortion on demand, elective abortion on demand until birth. And I think that's wrong. I'm pro-life and I'm going to continue to fight for pro-life policies here in Washington, D.C. But again, that's why I'm supporting this piece of legislation and have worked very hard to make sure it also includes provisions that expand WIC for needy mothers. So again, with socioeconomic status should not dictate whether or not you choose to be able to have a child or not. So that's one way where we're trying to enable women to be able to choose life and help support them. Another aspect, when you look at child support in this bill, we're trying to make sure that we have a fatherhood crisis in this country, and we're trying to make sure that the fathers are coming to the table and we give mothers the tools to have those resources. So when we look at, again, this is a comprehensive pro-life package. I think it provides a lot of needed answers to a lot of the challenges facing us right now. And again, this is about supporting mothers before, during, and after a pregnancy.
Some others have also said that Democrats are pushing this plan for abortion on demand. What Democrat is pushing that a mother could end the life of her child right up to the second of birth? Who is pushing that?
All of the Democrats in Congress voted for that package on the floor earlier this year, right after the Supreme Court decision came down. So unfortunately, that is what they have voted for. And so we've laid out this alternative plan that does bring us in line as a country with many other nations that have that kind of a restriction on abortion to help support life. 15 weeks along, babies can feel pain. And this bill does include exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. So I think it's again about laying down that contrast in priorities. I think that the Democrats' position here in Washington, D.C. and what they've been talking about out on the campaign trail is extreme. And I think that this, again, is a way where we can help protect and save lives and, again, help support families and encourage more women across this country to choose life.
Why not push something like they've done, Republicans have done in this state with the heartbeat, essentially 6 weeks of pregnancy? Why do 15 instead of 6?
Well, I'm looking to build consensus here in Washington, D.C. And so that's why I'm going to continue to support pro-life policies. And I've supported those not only in Iowa, but out here in Washington, D.C. I'm traveling the district and I'm hearing from taxpayers who are struggling to make ends meet right now. So I'm trying to present reasonable solutions out here in Washington that we think have a chance of getting across the finish line. Again, when I talk to people in the district and I say, hey, we should talk about a 15-week abortion ban versus a on-demand until birth ban. Most people I talk with agree we need to have that conversation about where that line exists. So that's why, again, I'm continuing to work on all of these comprehensive pro-life policies. I think being pro-life is more than just the abortion issue. I think it is about supporting working families. It is about educating people about stillbirth and how we can do that. And I'm doing that across the aisle here in Washington, D.C., working with Alma Adams from North Carolina to introduce a bill that would help expand the availability of the block grants to do stillbirth education around this country. So there are so many ways where we can help expand access to services. I'm on many pieces of legislation that look to enhance the healthcare providers who are available in rural America. 6 counties in my district are considered maternal health care deserts. So how can we get more midwives to those areas so that there is some sort of a provider? How can we incentivize through existing economic development dollars the ability to open and expand or create new maternal health care centers? So those are the kinds of areas where I'm focused on presenting reasonable options and solutions, because again, I think this is about comprehensive pro-life solutions that we can help support working families, help moms choose life, and help support them when they're pregnant and after they're pregnant.
PolitiFact had reviewed similar criticism about Democrats. That bill that House Democrats had supported, they found that women could only have abortions upon delivery if the doctor had determined that the woman's health was at significant risk that late into her pregnancy. It can't just be for any reason, according to what PolitiFact had found here. Coming up next, why Congresswoman Hinson wants more focus on border security, but also what she thinks about how Republican governors are trying to get that focus.